Hello everybody. I have a pretty decent video today. I managed to find about 100 pictures of this area on the west side of Manchester, and I'm going to show you about 30 of them. There's not really any remnants that remained of this area because it's just been commercialized and destroyed over the years. But this was once called Granite Block, and this is now just Granite Street. As you can see, it's a very commercialized district that I consider very gross looking compared to the older stuff that used to be here. And it's really sad to see what happened here as soon as I get into showing you these pictures. But it was once beautiful here, it really was. And due to just greed and corruption and pretty much politics getting involved with money and builders, this is what we have nowadays. But anyway, I'm going to start with the first picture that I found here that was dated to 1892, as well as two earlier 1900s photos. And as you can see in those three photos that I showed you, it looked quite different back then, as it originally started as just a quaint street that was lined with beautiful elm trees and houses. And it's really sad to see what happened here. It really is. As the original architects of the city, they gave us a good footprint as they intended to build a beautiful city here. And over the years, like I was just saying, everything got destroyed, as there's hardly any remnants of the original structures that used to be here. I'm underneath the overpass right now, and hopefully I don't get pooped on by a pigeon. But anyway, I'm going to go over the Granite Street Bridge history for a little bit here. It's a little loud, so bear with me. But this picture here that I found was dated to 1896. And it shows what I believe is likely one of the original Granite Street bridges that was built in 1851, and it was destroyed by a flood in 1896. And as you can see, it was a wooden bridge, and the water just swept it away, as this entire area was very prone to flooding back then, before the dams were built and regulated all the water coming down here. And once again, the bridge that replaced the previous one that got destroyed by flooding also got destroyed by flooding during 1938, as there was catastrophic flooding around here, as you can see from the pictures. The water would literally pretty much rise and go over this bridge, and it would take over this whole area. The water would go almost up to where that tower is that you can see in the background. And right here, I managed to find a few pictures of people that were gathering around for the grand opening of the new bridge that was getting built during I believe the mid-50s or early 50s. And as you can see, it was quite a gathering. And also, if you notice in one of the pictures, there was two large coal chimneys here that were present on adjacent to the other side of this building. And one of them was known to be the world's tallest coal chimney on the planet. And I believe, if I can recall, the coal chimney had 12 generators in it or something like that, and it powered a good amount of the mills that were around in this area. So it was a massive power generator. This here originally wasn't going to be in my video, but I just noticed that this old sign was here. So Park and Royal Cleaners was here, and I believe I do remember this as a kid being here. And I believe the building was right here. It turned into a very sleazy pawn shop for a while, and it got torn down a little while ago. I'd say at least 15 years ago or so. And if I recall, there were two dealers in here that ran the pawn shop, and I believe one of them murdered the other one, and he got away with it, if I recall. And I'm not sure if there was actually a building here, or if this was just always a retaining wall just to keep the soil back. And this may have just always been a parking lot. I'm not positive though. But these stone blocks, they may have been a foundation for something, but to me they look more like a retaining wall, which is likely what it is. But yeah, there was a very sleazy pawn shop there at one point. Very sleazy. Also, I wasn't intending on filming this, but I'll throw it in. This garage has also been here for a while. I'd say it was probably built in the 50s. As it's a cinder block building, so I don't think it dates back to like the 20s, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Although I'm not sure if they had cinder blocks back then. And also, this was once the location of I believe the original Dunkin' Donuts, or the first Dunkin' Donuts that was located in Manchester. I've been in here many times as a child, and I recall they used to make fresh donuts here, and the donuts back then taste a lot better than the ones they have now, that's for sure. And I believe it stayed a Dunkin' Donuts up until maybe the early 2000s. I'm not positive, but I think right about that time period. And right about here is where I think the location is of these next couple of pictures. One of the pictures depicts some Civil War era soldiers, and the picture is dated to the 1890s, and it's really cool looking. And the other picture is showing a funeral from a soldier that died during World War I. And I think this is who the gentleman was. As back then, they had a lot more respect for soldiers. When soldiers died, they used to have parades for them. And that's rarely seen nowadays. And as you can see, this area has changed dramatically. It was once beautiful, and now it's gross. It really is. And right here is very sad, as this was once called Granite Block Corner or Granite Square Corner. And as you can see from the pictures that I'm about to show you, is that it looked a lot nicer back then, that's for sure. And what once stood here was a beautiful rounded building that wrapped around this entire corner. And I'm going to post a couple pictures that date back to the early 1900s. I was alive when this building was present, but I really don't remember it, as I was probably 5 or 6 years old. As when you're 5 and 6, your memory's not really remembering buildings, let's put it that way. But I'm fairly confident that I've been inside this building, as this building used to have a lot of stores in it. But anyway, I'm going to show you these pictures, and you're gonna see why. It's really sad to see what happened in this area. And right here is my guesstimate of where this ice cream stand was that I'm about to post. The original structure was built in probably the 1880s or 1890s, but believe it or not, they did have ice cream back then. as people used to harvest ice out of ponds and lakes during the winter, and they'd store them in underground areas, and they'd cover them with straw. So even during the summer, they had ice back then before electricity. But I believe the ice cream stand was called Ice Cream by the Plate, as you can see in the first picture. And it was really cool looking with all the signs and whatnot. And with the second picture, you can see that the brick building was built afterwards, which was the Granite Square building. Really cool stuff, it really is. Yeah, we'll take a little stroll up this area. This is South Main Street. And this is where a granite block used to be. And as you can see, it looks nothing like it used to. It's just ugly looking modern commercial buildings that I do not care about. They're all ugly. They have no character or class. And there's hardly any remnants of what used to be here. There's a couple things around this corner that I'll get to towards the end of the video where there's some remnants of the older stuff. There's not much. But I believe right about here, there used to be a hotel called the Merrimack Hotel. And it was, I'd say, right about here somewhere, as you can see in this picture. And it was just a large wooden building. It was nothing special, but it was cool that there was a hotel here at one point. And here's a picture likely dated to the 1930s or possibly very early 1940s. But it's showing a traffic line that's heading north towards Granite Square. And it mentioned that this was after they removed the trolley tracks, as there used to be electric trolleys that used to go up and down this road. And this building's been here for a while too, so I'll just document it. It's called Tires Incorporated, and it's been a tire changing station for like ever, as far as back as I can remember. And that's the coolest car that I've seen today. And this is also Dave's garage, he's a well-known mechanic through Manchester, and my mother used to actually babysit his kids like during the 80s. And we'll head down South Main Street for a little while to get away from Granite Square, which I will be back to in a little bit. I just want to break this video up a little bit. That's a cool truck. It's not worth $30,000 though. Not even close. This is also a very old service station. As you can see, it's brick and it was painted. I can tell just by the brickwork that that's very early 1900s. But right here, let me go step back a little bit. I managed to find a picture of this storefront here, and you can see the gentleman standing in front of it. But this building is still here, but as you can see, it looked a little bit different back then, as the advertising always looked cooler in the older days, all the signs and whatnot. But as you can see, this is one of the original buildings. As you can see, it looks nice and it's well constructed. As you can see here, they built a canal. It's not a canal, this is actually a river, but they built rock walls and built this bridge here. I can only imagine the treasures that are found on the bottom of this bridge. There's a lot of coins and stuff down here, I guarantee that. It'd be a great place to go mudlarking. And if you don't know what mudlarking is, it's when you go searching around in these old rivers when the water's low. You'll find all kinds of stuff. All kinds of treasures. Also a lot of broken glass. I'm on the corner of Varney and South Main Street. But right here is a prime example of old architecture versus modern architecture. As this picture I'm about to show you was dated to 1892, as there was once a beautiful house that sat here. And in the background you can see the Varney School there. But here's the picture, as there's no doubt that back then things looked a lot nicer than today. You know, and here's your modern style of apartment buildings. Not very modern. These were probably built in the 70s or 80s, but as you can see, there's absolutely no character to them. And in my opinion, these things are basically prison buildings. You have absolutely no freedom when you live in these things. It's just, I could never live there. I just couldn't do it. Nothing against the people that live there, but I could never live in a building like that. But I'm gonna cross the street. There's a few old buildings up here that I'm gonna check out real quick. I'm still on Varney Street, and they used to call this Mass Road, by the way, that would lead you to Goffstown. But this is a very old service station. This is probably really old, that dated back to when the automobile first got invented, which would be the very early 1900s. And as you can see, it's a really neat looking brick building. And you can still see the old lettering. And it used to be called Mass Road Motor Company. And across from me is where the Varney School used to be. And now it's been converted into apartment buildings. Big surprise there. But as you can see, it had beautiful granite blocks that retained all the soil that, you know, obviously grew grass. Nice granite block staircase leading up to it. And it's a very beautiful building. We're gonna check it out. This wasn't part of my plan, but I could see it from the distance and I just had to come here. And this was obviously once a school. And it's a gorgeous building. It really is. And the top's all wooden. And it's very kept up. That's what I always say. If you keep up with these old buildings, they literally last forever. Unlike a modern building that's made out of plywood, I don't care what you do to it, it's going to rot out, because plywood is made out of glue, and glue will fail over time and your house will crumble. Yeah, look at this entryway. That's just so impressive. It really is. It's sad because we used to have like masters of granite and brick around here. Just straight up craftsmen and professionals. You couldn't find people to build this nowadays. They don't exist. That's why I would have loved to have existed back then, or lived back then, because I would have been one of the guys working on these buildings. Granted, it's very hard work, you know, and I work hard myself, but I love it. I really do. Because at the end of the day, I feel like I accomplished something other than sitting on a computer and punching a bunch of numbers into a screen. Not that I'm against that type of work, but for me, I like work that's rewarding. Absolutely gorgeous. They don't build them like that anymore, folks. And we'll walk around the back, check it out. Even here is another example of old architecture versus modern. As this is the old stuff, which is absolutely beautiful. And this was modern brick. Not very modern. It was laid out, you know, probably during the 70s or something. Maybe even later. Could have been the 80s. But as you can see, it's very plain Jane compared to that. There's also a very old cemetery that's adjacent to that building. It wasn't part of my plan to walk through here, so I'll just get a quick snapshot of it anyway. But I see headstones dated to the mid-1800s, so it's pretty old for sure. That one's dated to 1827. So maybe I'll walk through here someday, but not right now. And a nice wide angle shot of this building one more time so you can see the roof. Again, original construction and likely 60s or 70s or possibly even 80s construction. But I just wanted to document this building, as you never know, it could catch on fire tonight and it'll just go up in flames and disappear. And me and Tux are heading north up South Main Street again, but I just wanted to film the other side of this bridge. And it's crazy how much work they put into building all these walls. It really is. But there's retaining walls for as far as the eye can see. And I think the reason why they built these is just to control the flooding that used to happen in this area. Just to contain the water so it would flow smoothly and not rise above the banks. As I cannot see any other reason as to why they would have done that. As that's a lot of work, it really is. Also, I'm not 100% positive, but I'm about 90% positive that this was my great-grandparents' house. As my dad used to have a 73 Mustang Mach 1 that he used to store in this garage during the winter. And I do recall these bricks, so yes, this was their house. And it was a nice house. I don't really remember it because obviously they were my great-grandparents and they, you know, they passed away when I was young, so. But yeah, I'd been inside this house. So that's cool that I actually remember this. I was actually texting my mother, who's in Florida, if she could send me the address if she remembered it, but I just happened to find it on my own. And this would have been my mother's grandparents that lived here. And it's actually in original condition. It's all wood still, minus the vinyl shutters. I'd love to work on this. This would be so cool, but they'd never hire me because I'd charge way too much to fix this, as it's all lead paint. But anyway, I thought I'd share this with you. I'll do one more walk around, as I have family that watch my videos. They'd like to see this. Like I said, I'm like 90% sure this is the house. My great-grandparents used to own this. Are you? Yeah. Yeah, the Poiriers. I haven't been here since I was like 6. Oh, okay. But my dad used to store his Mustang in this garage during the winter. And now I'm back to my destination of the Granite Square area. I got a little sidetracked down there, but hopefully I didn't lose your attention. But this next picture I'm about to show shows a fire that happened at this building during 1957. And there was, because of that fire, the 3rd floor had to be torn off and it ended up getting rebuilt. And when it got rebuilt, it was no longer the same beautiful building. The bottom portions of the building remained original, but as you can see in the pictures that it drastically changed, which is sad, but unfortunately, fire happens. And here's the pictures. And here's another picture that I dug up that's facing eastward towards the Merrimack River. And I believe it's dated to the early 1900s. And here's a picture that's likely dated to the 1930s. And it shows a storefront that was part of the Granite block building or square building. And the company was called the Eugene Carroll Brigham Shoe Store. And I managed to find an exterior picture and an interior picture. And also here's some various pictures of the Squag fruit store. I'm not 100% certain of the location. I think it was at the end of the building. It may have actually been across the street. I'm really not sure, to be honest with you, as I didn't look too hard. But I believe the building existed up until the early 80s. That's when it got destroyed, and that's when all this crap was built. But anyway, here's a few pictures of the Squag fruit store. This is a cool bit of history that I never knew about. I don't think the picture was actually taken in this spot. But there was a group of kids that were called the Safety Patrol Kids. And they would take courses and they would get they'd get different badges and belts and whatnot depending on how much training they've had. So they used to be cross guards and they'd be safety mentors for other kids. So I thought that was kind of neat and I'd share it. And these three buildings are what remains of this granite block area as far as older structures. These two wooden buildings here are obviously from the very early 1900s or 1800s. They have not been vinyled and they look original and they're in excellent condition. I don't think this brick building is original as it just has a brick facade on it, so it's probably wooden or cinder blocks on the side. But it may be original, but I highly doubt it by looking at it. But also this building here, I've driven by this hundreds of times in my life and I've always wondered what this building used to be. But this used to be a theater and it dates back to the early 1900s. I think they used to actually have silent movies here. That's how old this place was. But it was once a movie theater, or a theater. And it also had a nickname called it had something to do with spitting, as kids would often be on the balcony and they would spit down onto the crowd. It was called the Spit Boy Theater as a nickname or something like that. But anyway, this is all that remains of this once beautiful block, is these three buildings, which is crazy when you really think about it. And here's a picture that dates back to probably the 60s or 70s, but there was once a building here called the Gnome Building or Nom Building. I'm not sure what its exact purpose was, but I believe it stood here or possibly right there next to where that light pole is. This entire block right here used to be all apartment buildings, and it got torn down when they built this overpass and they built this restaurant here. But there used to be a small stand of apartment buildings on the street corner as well that have obviously long gone. But I believe the Nom building was right about here somewhere. And me and Tux are back on South Main Street again. I almost forgot, but I found a bunch of various pictures of this area that date back to the late 1800s and early 1900s, and here they are. This is a neat picture that's dated to, I think, 1974 or 75. And during this time period, there was a gas shortage. As you'll see in the pictures, that there was a lot of cars lined up to get gas. And I do recall coming here as a child, as I do recall these old gas pumps that were here. And it just goes to show you that even back then, politicians started getting involved with gas and emissions and all that bullshit that we're still dealing with today. So nothing's really changed since the 70s. But anyway, here's the picture. And right now I'm on 2nd Street, and the picture I'm about to post depicts what happened during a flood that happened during the 1930s. I'm trying to line the picture up, but I believe most of the buildings in this area got destroyed, so it may match like this area right here, but I'm not 100% correct. But anyway, here's the picture. And this is going to conclude my video. I hope you enjoyed this brief history of the granite block or granite square on the west side that used to exist. And as you can see, it was once a beautiful place, and it's just been totally destroyed and it's lost to history. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed.